Hi. There's a moment just before dawn when the world is neither asleep nor awake. That is a sacred in between. It's not darkness, it's not light, but a soft remembering. It's that space, something ancient within us starts to stir. Not for everyone, but for some of us. And that stirring isn't loud, it's not very dramatic, but it's like a soft whisper that nudges us to finally become still enough to hear something. Welcome back to the Eternal Self podcast, and today we will step into Yoga of Sita, chapter 3. Not as witnesses, not as listeners, but I welcome you to witness a truth that does not shout and that basically nudges you to think about who we really are. Now, chapter 3 is not about becoming something new, it's about recognizing what has always been quietly holding us together. So, there are times of confusion, there are times when you're waiting, and even in moments you thought you were lost, there is a silent strength. And that strength does not announce itself, it does not seek validation at all, and it does not rush to make things happen for you. It simply remains like the earth beneath your feet, like the breath returning without any effort, and like the love that continues even when it is unrecognized or unseen. And today, we enter that space of silent strength, the intelligence that does not react, but it just knows. So, wherever you are right now, pause and let the noise settle just a little, because this is not a chapter you listen to. This is a podcast that you will remember. So, with that said, I'd like to welcome Dena Miriam back to the Eternal Self. Hi, Dina. Welcome back. Namaste.
Namaste. Happy to be back.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Dina, today we are going to talk about chapter 3 of the Yoga of Sita. And I also wanted to, because throughout the book, there are subtle hints around superpowers that people in that time had. And also through the ages, now I've been thinking about, like in the Mahabharata, Sanjay could look at the Mahabharata happening in some distant space. He could view it and narrate that to Drishtastra. So those powers have always existed. I just wanted, maybe today, if you could shed some light on how they happened then and how in today's age they're equally accessible, and something around those siddhis.
So, in terms of the Mahabharata, he was bestowed that power for an important purpose, to be able to record for the world what was taking place. In the Treta Yuga, as is evident in Sita's yoga, it was a more spiritually advanced time. What does that mean? It means that there was a deeper alignment with Dharma, and so there were qualities that just came naturally to people, not to everybody, because in every age there are people at different levels. Even in the darkest time, there are people of enlightenment. And even in the highest age, there are people who are at a more elementary stage in their soul journey. So there are always going to be people at different stages. But you can say the general population was at a more spiritually attuned state during the higher yugas. In the Satya Yuga, there was a much more prevalent identity with oneness, with the unity of the union with the divine. And people's perceptions, generally speaking, they were aware of divine energies. They were aware of, in the early stages, you could say they saw the deities because their perception was such that they could see into those worlds. In the Treta Yuga, where Raman Sita took birth, it was already a declining period. So they say that in the Satya Yuga, there was such deep attunement with the divine that rituals weren't needed, mantras weren't needed. It was just the power of mind. As perceptions declined, the mantras and rituals were developed to help the sages regain that Satyayuta consciousness. You needed tools. And then in the further decline, those tools became ritualistic and not for the purpose of attaining union with the divine, but to control the weather and to do all, yeah, like you see in the Mahabharata, those tools are used as weapons. So there was a continual decline of consciousness. Now, these are qualities that we can cultivate. We can, there are people who have siddhis who can materialize things. I've seen people materialize things. But the people who I've seen do that, in my mind, were not enlightened beings. They just, and in Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, there are all kinds of stories of people who had perfected a certain siddhi. There was one yogi who could manifest fragrances, all kinds of, you want the fragrance of the rose, he could manifest it. There was another yogi who had a helper in the astral world who would make things disappear. He would walk into a store and touch something, and that helper would just make it disappear and appear somewhere else. So there are all kinds of ways in which the siddhis are used for material gain or for self-serving purposes. So in our age, where we're at a ascending, the beginning of our long ascent back to the higher ages, um, these these abilities are being talked about openly now.
Yes.
In terms of remote viewing, since the 1960s or 70s, maybe 70s, the militaries of many countries had protocols for remote viewing. And it was a secret program. I know the US military had it, and I've heard that the Russian military had it. This was during the Cold War. So they were spying on each other, but they were also spying on each other through these practices. And I know when we had the US did its moon landing in the late 60s and early 70s, there were people who in the military, in the secret program, who were doing remote viewing of the moon. Now but there were very specific protocols for this training. And the purpose had nothing to do with anything spiritual. The purpose was security and gaining an advantage over your opponent. It was a military purpose. Now we have all kinds of people on the internet who claim to do remote viewing.
Yes.
And I have listened to some of them, and a lot of them has to do, with remote viewing of aliens, ETs,
That's
all
more
kinds of things.
being coming across as channeling. Also, Dina, the channeling that is, yeah, becoming so and so more.
The channeling has become very common, and the remote viewing also. Uh, but the accounts that I've listened to, most of them do not seem authentic to me.
Yes.
So again, the question is, why put your energy into cultivating this unless there's something spiritual and a spiritual objective? When you could be spending your time, I mean, some of these things happen naturally through meditation. The more you cultivate your spiritual practices, the more likely these things are just going to happen to you.
They would happen naturally, right? Once you're aligned with the higher purpose. Because I think the qualities of devas is like, think of the greater purpose, something of a larger purpose. So if you are aligning with a larger purpose on earth, these things will just flow naturally because you are aligning with the higher purpose of the divine. Is
There was a time in my life earlier in my sadhana when I began to have such experiences, and it was nothing that I attempted. They just what happened, and actually, it wasn't particularly meaningful.
hmm.
It didn't bring me closer to the divine, but it helped me realize that I'm much more than this body, and
Yes.
that there's much greater potential. And then they disappeared. I stopped having those, and now it manifests in a different way for me, uh, uh, um, in a way that serves a purpose. So my focus has always been, my goal is to realize my oneness with the divine. Does it serve that purpose, or does it serve the well-being of others? If it, even if it's not helping me get closer to the divine, but it's helping other people in some way, then that's a benefit. Or if there's a teaching that is important, so one has to ask yourself toward what purpose.
Yes. Yes. And how does one align oneself more to a higher purpose? And is that even something that's ordained, or is that something that one can desire for? How does that work?
One has to have the desire for it for sure, and then one has to engage in practices that help keep that desire alive. It's very easy to get lost in the details of daily life, but by reading sacred texts, by keeping your mind on whichever aspect of the divine appeals to you, whichever your Ishtadeva is, whoever, by meditation, by japa. I mean, there are lots of tools that we have to to awaken that desire and to stimulate that desire. Because without that desire, you just pursue material objectives, Um, but in order to realize the higher purpose of life, we have to work on cultivating the desire for the divine, for the desire for greater knowledge, for greater understanding, for the perception of the divine, for a deeper spiritual life. There has to be a desire for that. And if the desire is not there, you can pray for it. There are things that you do to cultivate that desire.
Hmm. True. And Dina, I'm just thinking in the book, in Sita's Yoga, in there were a lot of times when Devani and the group that she had associated with, they were doing collective meditations and going somewhere else and doing some collective activity. So, what was the process inside that collective? Where were they going, and what were they accessing, and what were they were getting visions in those meditations? And can you?
So that's very different from in the chapter Mind Over Matter. You see that Devani, when she's younger, there's a sage in her community, and she sees that he has the ability to manifest things and to heal and all that. She wants to learn that. And so she knows that if you play with mantras in certain ways, you can have certain effects. She starts to experiment and begins to materialize things. But then she takes a misstep and through her experimentation, and this Baba chastises her, and she's shaken by that, and she vows not to do it again. But she has that ability. And then some years later, when there's trouble in the village and there's a very sort of nasty couple creating the trouble, she loses her how should I say it? She gets tempted into using that power again,
Yes, yes.
which could have led to a very ill outcome. Luckily, it didn't create the outcome, and she stopped it before she could create a death, which it could have done. And she has to learn how to regulate her power. Now, later on, when she becomes part of this collective in the village, they're naturally traveling into the astral world, which is another one of these qualities that we can cultivate. Again, it's not out of curiosity. It's for a spiritual purpose. I mean, when she is traveling into the astral world, she comes to understand situations in a different light. She comes to understand a situation in light of its past, the backstory that led to the particular situation. So and also she sees that a lot of the spiritual work to change the outer conditions takes place on the inner plane. But you have to be very advanced to be able to do that work on the inner plane that will create a different outcome on the outer plane. The outer conditions are a manifestation of our inner conditions. To change the outer conditions, you really have to change your inner state. And that's the work they do. And it when you're just an individual, you work with your own inner state in order to change your outer conditions. But eventually you can work as part of a collective to change world affairs. And I'm sure the yogis who are hidden away are working on moderating our world affairs. Had they not, we might have blown ourselves up decades ago. So
Yes,
there's a lot of work being done on the inner plane by people who have great spiritual capacity, who are guiding the human community, people that are not out in the marketplace.
yes,
They because it's so easy to misuse such powers.
yes, yes, yes. Dina, first the basic question, where is the difference between somebody sitting thinking that they're going astrally somewhere, imagining that they're traveling around space? Is that imagination, or is there, what is the way to kind of validate that experience that yes, I'm traveling in space? That was my first question that arose in this dialogue that we've right now. And also, yeah, let's start with that. I mean, how do I know it's
Well,
not imagination?
what is the imagination?
Like you're thinking that you're traveling in space and you're doing astral traveling. And
The imagination is this. There's an element of reality to what we call the imagination. You are projecting yourself, whether you're it's at an elementary stage, and you're sort of misperceiving what you're envisioning. The more you can refine that ability, the closer it comes to actual reality truth. But the imaginal quality is a divine quality, the ability of the mind to imagine things. It's not a quality that other species have, and so it's a divine quality that we have that we can refine. And so when people are imagining they're traveling in space, it's like visualization. It's a way of trying to cultivate that capacity.
mm,
So it's useful. But to claim that, to claim that it's I mean it's still in, you could say, in an early developmental stage. Just like, visualization is an important spiritual tool. When you're meditating, if you visualize your guru, you're invoking the presence of that guru. That's a they tell you to visualize the guru here, to visualize any of the devatas. Now, it doesn't mean that you're, depending on the power of your mind, that you're actually seeing the devata, but eventually it could be that. And that's why visualization is so important to keep practicing, because it strengthens the mind's ability to call up those realities. So people who are imagining that they're traveling in space and visiting other planets, that's okay. They're using their, imaginal faculty, but that's not to say that they actually travel to those places. They're still in the imaginal realms.
Yes, exactly. So I'm a little like there are two schools of thought. One is basic, like, whatever you wish to create, you can visualize it in your, in your, like, visualize it and imagine it and everything and feel that state and everything. That's one level of it. We've talked about it at length in the past as well. And the other is the Nirvikalp Samadhi, where the objective is to go into no thinking, no being state or something. Like, like, are these just stages of development? What does.
Stages of development. When you still have aspirations and desires and work to do on the earth plane, you're guided to you to develop your mind, to develop your mental capacity, uh, um, because you need to fulfill whatever your unfulfilled karma is, whatever your desires are. That's the stage that you're at, to seek to burn those through, to burn through your karma, to finish those aspirations. And there are those who say, I want to be done with it. I'm not looking to fulfill them. I just want to meditate and get done with it. You can fulfill them through spiritual practice, depending on where you are in terms of your desire for the absolute. And I think for a lot of people, they want to learn to manifest their reality, to manifest what they need, and they're guided to do that because that helps get them ready for higher stages. For it's part of their spiritual journey. There's nothing wrong with that. Eventually, you come to the point where there's nothing you want to manifest. There's nothing, you've done it all.
Hmm.
And so you want to, your only desire left is the desire for the divine. And so that's where your mental energy is focused on, knowing the divine, becoming one with the divine. That's where your mental energy is focused. But until you reach that point, then you're guided to use all the tools available, visualizations, but not to employ these abilities out of curiosity, but for a spiritual goal.
That's the key thing.
And always to have a measure of um, checking oneself. You know, if when you do remote viewing, does it matter what you see across the globe? You're seeing what. I mean, with these spy programs, these people doing remote viewings would go into the Americans would go into to see what the Russians were doing. Well, the objective was very clear:
And
military
important.
security, national security.
Yeah.
You know, now a lot of people do it. I'm not sure for what purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And this whole channeling thing that's going on, yes, you just mentioned that a lot of it looks like fabricated, but there was something I was reading that we're getting into that stage of the yugas or something. I'd like you to give your view on that, Dina, that I that there would be more and more interaction from the other side. Is that.
There's more and more interaction, and not. I take a neutral view about some of these. I mean, I know I've listened to so many people channeling the Pleiadians and the all different, species. How do we know? Some of the messages are good, if it's a good message, if it's helpful. How do we know?
Yeah.
I always say I only know what I know.
Yes.
If it's an uplifting message and it's helpful to someone, um, but so much of it one has to be cautious, because there's so much now talking about everything's going to change this year, this month, it's all going to happen, we're going to be elevated to a new state, and then the month passes, the year passes, what's changed?
Only their viewing, probably the number of people viewing the
So
retrogrades and the, yeah, some days it's a pink
be a
moon.
distraction. It's important not to get distracted.
Mm.
Um, Some of it could be entertaining, but still, we want not to get distracted because it takes you away from the real work.
Yes.
If one's pursuing, a channeling, and you never know there are all different kinds of entities out there.
Yes.
So one has to be very careful about who one's contacting.
Hmm. True, true. Dina, you just mentioned that you only know what you know. And from reading your books, I know there is a lot of stuff that you know that I'm, step by step through these podcasts and through so much work that you're doing outside of this as well. What you know, Dina, you also know other words, because of the grace that you have received. Would you like to shed a little bit more light, which would be helpful for people around what is beyond Earth? How does that all work or look like?
Well, what we know, and physicists are coming to this understanding, the world that we see out there is not as it is. Our perceptions are very, very limited. Our visual perception is very, very limited to a very small spectrum. Our audio perception is very limited. We see and hear on a small scale. And the reality, what looks like matter, is condensed energy. Everything looks so solid, but it's not really solid. It's just energy that's been compressed. And so the physicists are cutting edge of physics today. Quantum physics is saying that the reality is different from what we have long thought it to be. So there are worlds that exist right here that are of a subtler dimension, that our physical eyes and our physical ears can't pick up the sounds and sights of those worlds, but they exist at a subtler level. And then the gradations of subtler and subtler and subtler and subtler worlds, that worlds of light, worlds of thought, that the places that we go when we leave our physical body, we go into those realms. They're as much our home as this is, but there's not one place. There are many places according to the vibration of your soul vibration. You go to a place that's compatible with that vibration. And so, some people, when they leave their physical body, what we call death, uh, at a more elementary level, just go into like a semi-sleep state until they're able to take birth again. But also commonly you in a more awakened state, and you're in a place that is compatible with your spiritual evolution, which is another reason why the more one focuses on awakening truly to the divine reality, then you are drawn into those higher spheres, which is why it's important not to get distracted, because that's one's goal, is to graduate from the lower spheres to the higher spheres, and eventually you come to the place where you don't keep returning to the physical, but you travel through those higher realms, because there are always higher realms to go to. So it's not like you get to one place and that's it, heaven for eternity. You continue to evolve and draw closer to the divine source. So
Beautiful.
I've described some of those in my books, all of my books actually. There is usually a chapter of Between Lives where I describe what those states are like, what I've experienced in those states between lives. It's different for everyone. My guru used to say a Christian, when they leave the body, might see Christ, and a Muslim might see Muhammad, and they think, "Oh, this is it." Well, that's what their soul is being drawn to, because that's the reality that they are most attuned to. And so each person has a different experience, just like each person in our physical life has a different experience. No two people have the same experience in the journey on earth. It's different for everyone.
True.
It's the same thing once you leave the body. Everyone's experience is different. So I describe what my experience is like when I have left my various incarnations.
Right. So how does that, Dina, I mean, I'm thinking when my grandfather was passing away, he had started to murmur things for a little while. And he was like, oh, uh, Ramchandra ji is coming. So is that a play of our subconscious mind, or is there certain visions that they're actually getting, or because of their
Visions.
hmm,
Yeah,
visions?
visions that they're getting. I mean, for many of us, and I describe this in my first book, My Journey Through Time. Um, I describe accurately my last experience of leaving the body and how my guru appeared to me and helped me cross over. For most people, there's a guide, somebody who one has developed a deep attunement with, who is there at that moment to help guide one. I mean, if you read the near death experiences of people, they all describe a very beautiful process. Now, I imagine it's not true for very negative types. They probably have a different kind of experience because, people who are filled with anger and hatred will attract those kinds of beings to them. And which is why the work of Siddhis yoga is so important. You want to continually to purify your inner landscape, your emotional life, your mental life, so that you can attract souls of high vibration to you.
Hmm, beautiful. Great. Dina, anything else that you'd like to say as final words for this podcast?
Well, I think let's leave it at that. There's much to continue on to be said about this, both the cities that arise naturally, the pursuit of cities, and how one should approach them. Um, I think that's an ongoing theme that we'll keep coming back to.
Great. I would love that. That's a subject that I'm very, very intrigued by. And also, Dina, I wanted to say that, what did I want to say? Okay. For the next one, maybe uh, fine, we'll plan that out and take it from there. Yeah.
I think it's also good for people to submit questions,
Yes.
and maybe we try to do this every other week.
Okay, sure. We could do that too. Mm, yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll be in touch about the next session, but we can see if it's, let me see, 2 weeks?
Yes.
What would that date be? That would be uh that would be the 20th.
I don't have a. I'll stop the recording.
We can look at that.